So we are starting our new unit, and this is our beginning of this, so module 4.1 unit rates. Okay, so I can find unit rates. So we've got a couple of key terms, so make sure you pause and take time to copy these down. So a rate is a comparison of two quantities with different values. So we talk about miles per hour. That's a rate in which a car moves, right? We have all sorts of different kinds of rates. Gasoline is a rate, right? Dollars per gallon. So it's comparing two things with two different values or units. So a unit rate is a rate with that the denominator or the second number will be a 1. So miles per hour is a unit rate because the hour is 1 hour, where rates can have any. Sometimes in the store you'll see, a $5 for two of them. Well, that wouldn't be a unit rate, but a unit rate has to have that second quantity be a 1. And then we have complex fractions. That's a fraction that contains a fraction in either the numerator, the denominator, or both. Okay, and we saw that when we were dividing fractions, where we had one fraction divided by another fraction, and it looked like one crazy fraction. So we are going to find a unit rate, and sometimes we have to do that by using a rate, right? So it says here that Jeff hikes half a mile every 15 minutes, and 15 minutes is also a quarter of an hour because, right, if I do 15 over 60 for minutes, right? Oops. And we reduce that by 15, it will come out as a quarter. Right, so that's how we get a quarter of an hour. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill in our table. So they told us that a half a mile is a quarter of time. So if we double that, 1 mile, right, add half and a half, is going to be half an hour. So then if we do 1.5, right, just add another half, that's 3/4 of an hour. We add another half to this, we get 2 miles. Now we jump from 1 to 2. That's a whole different kind of jump, right? So if I know at 1 hour it's 2 miles, I'm going to double the time, so that means I'm going to double the miles. Okay, so what we just found there is a bunch of rates. These are all of Jeff's rates. So we could use this to find anything we wanted, right? So these are just a bunch of rates. Half a mile for a quarter of an hour, 4 miles for 2 hours. These are rates. But what we want to do is very specifically find a unit rate, right? So we're comparing miles to hours, and we want to find the unit rate, which means we need this denominator to be 1 hour. And so we can look right here. That's 1 hour, and so then our miles is 2 miles. And so that would be Jeff's unit rate, because that's where the denominator is going to be 1. So this is a different one where we don't have a table to fill in, right? So we don't need a table to find that. That's just one method, is filling in a table based off the information we have. So it says, while remodeling her kitchen, Angela is repainting. She estimates that she paints 55 square feet every half hour. How many square feet does Angela paint per 1 hour? Right, so there's our question. And really the only important thing here is this rate she has, right? This is her rate, 55 square feet every half hour. So this is just a rate because our denominator is not 1. This is also what we would call that complex fraction, because we have a fraction in the denominator It doesn't have to be both. So we have a whole number in the numerator, but a fraction in the denominator. So that's a complex fraction. So what we're going to do, another way you can do this is to change the denominator to be 1, you can actually divide. And that's because we want to change this to 1. So anything divided by itself would get me 1, right? So what we're going to do is take our rate, 55 over a half, and we're going to divide by our denominator to cause this to become 1. Well, just like when we reduce fractions, if I do something to my numerator, I have to do it to the denominator. The same thing works the other way. If I divide the denominator, I have to divide the numerator. So we're going to do 55 over 1, and we're going to divide it by a half. But remember, when we divide fractions, we leave the first fraction and multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. Okay, so 55 times 2, that's 10, that's 1011 over 1, and so we would put 110 here. So how many square feet does Angela paint in 1 hour? Well, there it is, there's our rate. So we would say 110 square feet in 1 hour. There's our answer. Okay, so remember, a unit rate is where we always want our denominator to be 1. So we're going to divide by the denominator. So here's where I want you to pause and maybe just try this one. We are comparing two, so you'll have to find 2 unit rates. So I want you to try to find the unit rate of this one and find the unit rate of this one. You're going to have 2 unit rates. So we can leave these in minutes. We don't have to find these in hours, but sometimes it's easier because we have a fraction, right? So remember, 15 minutes compared to an hour is a quarter. We did that in the first problem. We would do the same thing for 20 minutes. So I would go 20 over 60, and we can divide by 10, and then divide by 2, and we should get 1/3. Okay, so that's 1/4 of an hour. This is 1/3 of an hour. So for the first pool, pool A, our rate is 2/3 gallon per 1/4 of an hour. And for pool B, our rate is 3/4 of a gallon per 1/3 of an hour. So these are just rates, remember, not unit rates. I need their denominators to be 1. So here I'm going to divide by 1/4. And here I'm going to divide by 1/3. So 2/3 times 4 over 1 is 8/3. That's going to be gallons per hour. And then 3/4 times 3 over 1 would get me 9/4 gallons per hour. So we have our unit rates. This one is pool A. This one is pool B. The only tricky thing now is that my denominators are not the same. Okay, so you either can change these to decimals or you can change them to common denominators. I think sometimes that's a little easier. All right, change these to common denominators. So times by 4, this would get me 32 over 12. And times this one by 3, I would get 27 over 12. And so then I can see which one actually has a larger rate. So we would say pool A is leaking faster. So things to remember to find a unit rate. Find rate first, right? Step one, find rate. Then divide by the denominator. And that's it, right? That's what I did for all of these examples is I first found the rate and then I divided both numerator and by denominator by the denominator to make it a unit rate. All right, so here's your independent practice. Try to find how much Paige mows in 1 hour if she can mow 1/6 of an acre in an hour. See you in class.